go here. Oh, nice. Yeah, we're live. What were we talking about?
We're talking about the CGA.
Oh, yeah.
G.
It was really funny because I was at this podcast thing and I talked to someone I haven't talked to in like 2 years or something, and he was like just asking me about how are things at work, and I don't know how we got into it, but we started. He asked me, like, he was surprised because I told him I've been using the product like I haven't used local VS Code since I talked to him last, and he was like, "Whoa, is that even possible to not work in VS Code?" And I haven't thought about it, and I had a hard time explaining to him like why don't I use VS Code? Everything's just
Mhm.
become um, like muscle memory, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I was about to say the same thing. Like it's about a habit, and we
Yeah.
discussed about this a long time ago here at CodeSandbox. How we can create a new habit for users that
Mm,
you know everyone. When I start coding, the first thing that came into their mind is my VS Code, my local environment, my how to install Node.js, and we are so used to these steps,
yeah.
and you don't think that you could you could find some way, another way to make it the same thing.
Yeah.
And for now, like Code Sandbox, when I want to start some project, I don't need to be bothered of thinking about what is the Node.js version, what I need to install, Python. I don't know. I just clone, and I know that my environment will be working in a
Yeah.
few small steps.
And
And
it's yeah.
this is when I create new habits for coding, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. And maybe that's the thing we need to explain for our users.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like, and one of the benefits is some of the friction you leave behind. But that's the thing, like human behavior, psychology is like we forget about the bad stuff.
Hmm.
So I can't remember, uh, like, or I don't feel the friction anymore that I had when I worked locally. But I remember, like, I think we talked about this, like, my first experience of being able to move between two devices without thinking about it. Like, I don't have to remember to commit something. The code is always there, it's always running, regardless of what device I'm using. And that's just natural to me. I don't have like that wow moment every time it happens because it's just natural to me. Um, but it really is one of those big wow moments that we should
Hmm.
talk more about. But yeah.
Yeah, it seems it's like when I was in college. I remember that I used to create my documents, my article papers in the Google Microsoft Word, and I always forgot to save the latest version in my computer. And
Yeah.
then when I went to the school, to the college, oh my God, this is out a stale version. And then at the middle of my college, the um, Google released Google Drive, Google Docs, and it was such a relief
Mm,
to have everything up to date, regardless my regardless the place I am, regardless the computer I am using, and that's the thing now for
mm.
coding. You have your code in any place, anywhere, and
Yeah.
it's mind blowing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just and I and the thing is also like we're just scratching the surface on this. Like one thing is having that code available anywhere on any device, but also that um, it's in its own like talking about contexts. Like it's in its own context. Like it's not on your computer. So you don't only have it available anywhere, anytime on any device, but you have every single branch available to you at any time on any device, in
That's
any
true.
tab on your browser. It's like you can jump into any context in your code at any time without disrupting anything, which is also like a huge benefit. um, and then
Yeah.
with the mental uh, concept of like that being like any version of your code is behind the URL, because the URL represents a specific branch of a running environment of that code. uh, and that, yeah, it's just, I guess this is the thing, like we're having such a hard time to explain to people how powerful this stuff is, because you kind of just have to
Hmm.
use it. uh,
Yeah.
and there's no good analogy for it. um,
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, uh, people ask about uh like offline support or this kind of stuff, and I used to think about this problem too.
mhm,
But it is 2023. Every place you go, you have internet now,
mm,
and even in airplane, even in the middle of nowhere, you have 5G or at least some internet connection.
mhm.
So it seems that this is a problem that will no longer exist in the future, like no internet.
Yeah,
And you can you could you even imagine spend some time without internet in your phone? It seems weird today, like because every place you go, you have internet in your phone.
yeah,
So I don't think maybe today it's still a problem, but I'm pretty confident that in the upcoming years is no longer be a problem. The latency will be lower and internet connection will be better and better anywhere. Of
yeah,
course, of course, we are talking about I don't know, um, American and European countries, but even in developing countries, the presence of internet will be better and very hopeful.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And still, you can still work locally, right? Because it's just your GitHub repository that's also available. It's kind of like Netflix. Like you don't download everything before you watch it because you want to watch it locally. You just stream it
Hmm.
because it's more accessible. And even though there is a risk that you get like a hiccup, like everybody's experienced this on Netflix or any streaming service, like
Yeah,
suddenly it stops or something. It rarely happens, but it can happen. But that doesn't mean that you always download the movie first, but you can do it if you're going to some place where you don't have internet. um,
yeah, that's right.
so but it is interesting, like just like how streaming movies can like relies on a good internet connection to get like the quality. Like if you want 4K resolution and stuff, like you need a good internet connection. um and I guess the thing you can experience in cloud is like latency. Like there's no latency in inserting um code, because that happens locally in the browser or in VS Code if you're using VS Code. But it's more
Hmm.
like the feedback, like the intelligence and the
Hmm.
diagnostics and
Hmm.
stuff, does have some latency. Uh, but what I realized, I don't really notice it. Um, it's kind of like in games. If you have some latency in like an internet connection, I remember playing like Action Quake 2, and if you had a bit of latency, you adapt to it. It's more of a rhythm thing than it is like a productivity kind of thing. You just change your rhythm a little bit,
Hmm.
and it just happens naturally. Humans are really good at this, adapting to latency. And it's not like
Okay.
it's not like half a second latency. It's just not as instant as local.
Mm-hmm.
But then, if that's your only concern, having instant intelligence, if that is so important that you can't be productive without it, then it's like a hard sell. But when you think about all these benefits we're talking about, like just
Yeah.
like this branch, as you said, we haven't committed anything. It's just a URL that we go to and we play around with this thing. And it's always there. And it doesn't matter what device we're using or anything. It's really, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the latency I think is a fair trade-off if you take in account, if you consider all the benefits you have in
Exactly.
using CPU.
Yeah. Just like, yeah, Netflix. Like there's so many benefits to Netflix than go and rent like a Blu-ray disc kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like you
totally.
get the optimal quality if you go and buy a Blu-ray disc or rent a Blu-ray disc. But when you're online, you have this full library of movies or branches that you can just go to and watch it immediately, kind of thing. It's yeah, I'm reaching for an analogy here. It's kind of hard, but it's somewhat related. Um,
Cool.
oh well.
Shall we
Anyways,
start?
yes. So yes, because we were playing around with this concept of uh, yeah, using like explicitly just talk about contexts. And the interesting thing about not having multiple stores, but having like one context instead that's being exposed, is that for once it doesn't matter. Like you can make these contexts as big as you want, as opposed to a React context. Because a React context, any change in that context will make any consumer of that context reconcile, which is the performance issue with React. But that's not true for this because it's reactive. But the other thing that's interesting about this is that when you have multiple stores, you get into the same challenge when you have a lot of hooks, where you lose this discoverability. You kind of have to know about all the hooks, just like we have here. Like we have a bunch of hooks here, and like the only
Mhm.
person who really knows the hook is the person who implemented it. It's really hard to like discover where is it used, what is it intended for, and just as I said, just discovering it. But what's interesting about having a context is that, for example, if we look at use branch context, yeah, we haven't started consuming it yet. But the point is that when you're like in a component, some component, and you just have a few contexts in your app, like we talked about, you have a global context, you might have a context related to the session of the user, and you can have a context for like the current branch. That's what we're operating with here. So when you use the branch context, you have it right here in your fingertips. Like you can dot it and you know everything that's available within that
Mhm.
context, which is one of like the biggest deals with global state stores, is that you have this single root object of state and you can just dot into it and you can explore all the state of the application, which is an amazing like way to learn about and just having a starting point when you want to consume some state or
Mhm.
do whatever. So that's something I discovered like after we talked last, and I played a bit more around with it. Um,
Cool.
and then another thing I discovered, maybe we could do this here immediately, is that if you use this pattern of like, I think it's called the feature pattern. We talked about this last time as well. So you kind of have, you don't have a components folder. You rather start with like an app, for example. And
Mm-hmm.
then that app has an index file. And, or maybe we should call it session here because it's a session context. So you start out with like the, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. We haven't moved to the components yet. But like conceptually, you start in the global context, and that's being provided at the root of the application. And then from there, you move into the next context, which would here be the session. So that means that this component is responsible for mounting up the session context. And then within a session, you can have a branch. So within the
Mm.
branch, you have something that's responsible for producing the branch context. And here we have the code editor, we have the editor, we have the Git panel, global error boundary. I can't remember where we use that. We'll figure it out. Well,
You
the
are kind of representing the hierarchy. How can I say the hierarchy of the code's components?
yes,
They call that.
exactly. And it's interesting how it kind of fits together that you can, if you just, it's not about like that, this is what typically happens, like you find some terminology that is appealing, like context, and then you kind of go all the way and everything's a context. Like I have to be careful about that, but it's really
Uh-huh.
interesting how it's kind of ties together, because previously I was very much like your state store should just describe the whole application, and then your UI is just a product of state changes. While there's this other camp of no, your UI is like the truth, and then your state is a product of your UI, which is like local component state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's some benefits to that because this is how we think as developers. It's like you have this UI in front of you, and how do you find,
Yeah.
how do you figure out where to insert new code or change and fix code? It's by looking at the UI and finding the components you're looking at. So having these contexts, you kind of get both things. So you're still like thinking components and where is the stuff, but you also have this, in this case, the session context that kind of gives functionality to the rest of the application.
Yeah. It's looks like uh nested pages, you know.
Yeah,
You know what is the previous page, just looking for the folder structure. And yeah, like it's a
yeah,
great way to try to visually represent uh, your application
yeah,
hierarchy.
yeah, exactly. And there's probably like challenges with this as well. Like there's
Yeah.
no silver bullet, but looking at how we, like, this is very hard for us to like what's which component is within what other component, and what is the composition of this. It's completely flat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a challenge. So we have flat components and we have flat hooks, and we don't see in the folder structure how things are related. um, but doing this, you actually see how things are nested into each other and what functionality is exposed to what components. So that's also the interesting thing here, is like I can go and look at the session context, and then I can see what kind of functionality is exposed um, from that context. And then I know that every single component nested within here has access to this functionality. And then I
Mm-hmm.
can go into the next context and I can look at what's exposed here. And then I know all the components within uh, this
Yeah.
branch has access to this functionality. So it, yeah, so the file structure gives you more information about how things are connected, which I like.
Yeah. Me too. I like it.
Sign in. Where do we do sign in? I think that's part of the top bar. I haven't like I don't want to nest it even more, but let's just imagine like the deepest concept we have is a branch. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and as we know from our editor, we would probably have other deeper concepts, like maybe each dev tool would have its own, could, or at least could have its own context.
Mm-hmm. So ideally, each new context you would create a new folder, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And I can show you what's also interesting about that. Because if we, yeah, okay, maybe we should just dive into looking at components now. So now we have like our context running, and I think we have all the functionality. We can jump back into them as we
Mm-hmm.
explore. But let's move away from this stuff. So we don't have this anymore. Let's just remove everything. So the thing is that we, first of all, we need to have our global context. So one thing I also discovered here is that, what do we call this? Impact exploration. So what this also does, as you said, like if every folder represents a component, that's like the entry component for that
Mm-hmm.
page or whatever it is, and then you can have a context related to that. The entry component would be the thing that provides that context to the rest of the component tree. And I
Right.
was thinking about this, and like uh, what's interesting about that is that when you want to kind of wrap a component tree in like a context, it's not only that you want to expose some functionality and some state, but you probably also want to expose an error boundary or a suspense boundary that's related to that, again, context being the component tree.
Mm-hmm.
So like as part of that pattern, you could do things like use, what do we call it? Use global context. Oh, I really hate that the auto import doesn't work when you're like in the thing from this global context. Yeah, so here we could like, here we're providing the global context, and if we were to do any like data fetching or whatever related to that, we could like add a suspense boundary here. That's the thing, like we talked about last time, about how there are certain primitives like suspense that kind of forces you to create new components,
Mm-hmm.
because you kind of, to do the suspense, you have to throw from within the components. You can't just continue writing components here. You kind of or JSX, you kind of have to use a component to take advantage of the suspense. Anyways, so impact exploration content. I'm just going to call this content. Yes. So what we want to do is go here and say use global context. And then we have our API here and we have our router here. So we can remove this. Do we use the API here? Oh yeah, we have the authentication stuff. Cool. Oh, there's a global error boundary. Yeah, but we don't really have, we shouldn't have this here then. Because then what we do is that we really just load the session. Oh, I haven't called it session, I guess. Export const session. I'm just shoving that in there for now. Why don't you find it? Oh, from inspector. There we go. So what we want to pass into this session, I guess, is the owner, repo, branch, and workspace ID. Owner, repo, branch, and workspace ID. Workspace ID. So let us implement that. I'll just shove it right in there. Owner string, repo string, branch string, workspace ID string. There we go. And then I think we should rather put this thing over here.
Yeah.
So whenever the
the same.
authentication state changes, we mount a new session. That makes sense. Did this save properly? I think we have a bug with
We have to return the components.
oh. Yeah, but I still think we have. You see it pending? I think it's when I'm renaming the when you rename a parent folder, something goes wrong with the files within it. I'm just gonna refresh and then. So now I think it formats. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Branch, workspace ID. So the thing is that looks a little bit weird here now is that we only have the branch page, right? But typically within a session, you would have like different things that you would mount. So it's a little bit weird that we just do. Let me just go and grab the use session scope. Session context. It's a little bit weird that I just do this. But it was more to kind of show the pattern of the file structure.
Yeah, ideally, you would have the router components here.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You would have the session first, and then you would do the routing within it. That's true. Maybe we should change that around so it makes a bit more sense. So let's keep the API there. And then we have a session, and then, yeah, let's just do that. And then we do the routing within the session. That makes more sense. Router equals use global context. And then we remove this stuff. Yeah, I'm like in the family app I'm working on, like it's a little bit different because it's like only one page and you have to be authenticated to even get into the app. While here you can also be unauthenticated. So it's a bit different.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So let's do branch here. Do we have branch? No, export branch. And this should have owner repo. Oh, sorry. Owner repo branch workspace ID. Owner repo branch workspace ID. Okay. And again, kind of we're following the same pattern. Just to get it in here, use branch context. return branch context provider. And this one requires branch data and picture. So this is, I guess in our editor, we had that data fetching stuff. Yeah. So let's put that into the index file instead. Let's just copy it. Yeah. So we're going to use the observer. And then we have use session context, use session context. And on the session, we are able to fetch a branch. So that's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And on the session, we are also able to initialize picture. So that's also something we're going to do. So let's see. Let's remove these two. And then we're going to just, we're going to suspend. So we're going to use the fill-in hook, the fill-in use hook from, oh, is it available in React?
I don't think so.
It's here?
Maybe in the latest Next.js version. Not sure. But I did implement it in a very similar way, which is use suspense promise, I think.
Yeah. It's also in Impact app.
Okay.
But I'm curious, like use from React. I wonder what's a usable? Yeah, it's a dennable. Yeah, for pending
Oh,
dennable.
so it's there.
It's like this is funny. Look at the typing here. And then I'm gonna show you the typing of this one. Signal pending promise, fulfilled promise, rejected promise. And here it's untracked. Oh yeah, I guess this is, what's this? Untracked. Oh, there is no status. Yeah. And then pending, fulfilled, rejected. Yeah, okay. I want to try using this now instead of the one in Impact. Because it should just work. That's interesting. Yeah, and what we're going to do is we're going to fetch the branch. We're going to call that with the owner repo branch and workspace ID, like so. And then we have initialize picture. And we're just going to use data ID because that's all we have on the branch data now. If we have time and we want to talk about optimistic updates, we can extend the data with some more details and then talk about how we would do. Yeah, so what we get back from this is, yeah, sorry. So one change I made after the last stream is that when we initialize picture, we returned the promise for the client and the progress from the same function. So it wasn't split up into two. So we can say initialize picture, initializing, or maybe we can just say client progress. And then we're going to see if initializing the client is rejected. Should probably call it client promise. Yeah, anyways. Let's initialize picture. Let's call it client promise. Client promise. And then pending. And then we have the progress. Like so. Oh.
Yeah.
Dot state. Sorry. Cool. So what we're yeah, so this is the last thing about this pattern is that if you look at here, let's say branch. So here we were basically, or maybe I can take this one. Yeah, okay, this is the simplest one. So here we are just exposing the context to the component tree. But then if we move in here, we are evaluating some stuff before we are, like which page we are on, before we expose the context. But in the branch, we are even doing data fetching before we expose the context. So this entry point becomes like more things. It becomes a way to, it exposes the context. It does any data fetching that's required to expose the context. It can be a suspense boundary for any data fetching within that context, and it can be error boundary to catch any errors within that context. So it's really interesting how that entry point becomes something more than just a component. Where are we?
Now the editor.
So now, oh my god. So now we provide the branch context here. And that should have branch data is data, and picture is client promise dot value. Yeah, it's just a typing thing. We'll fix that. Because I think this is iPicture client and this is picture VM client. Yeah. Let's just fix that immediately. iPicture client. There we go. Oh. Okay, and then we can provide the actual editor. So let's do that. And the editor is now just this stuff. And we don't need this even. Oh, okay. Let's clean it up and review it. Let's see. So we started here. We are exposing blah, blah, blah. And then here, blah, blah, blah. And then here, we are fetching the stuff. We're loading the editor, blah, blah, blah. So now we know we can use the branch context to get the ID. Isn't it on the branch context? Maybe we didn't do that. Oh, nice. Okay. Maybe we can talk about optimistic updates as well here now.
Cool.
There we go. Yeah, so what we get here is the branch data. So like a question in React is when you have like these big objects, for example, the branch data, it's only an ID here, but it's like it's way bigger when we actually implement it in the editor. And we don't, so the kind of naive approach to this, or I wouldn't say naive, but like the way you do this is that you kind of say branch and then you just shove the branch data into a signal. And then you expose that doing get branch, for example, and then return branch dot value. And that works. Like now we have the branch data in here. Anything can access that branch data. You you have access to it in any component. But the thing is, like, if this branch data were to update itself, for example, you change the branch name, for example, any component consuming any detail from the branch would reconcile because it's all within the same signal. So if you want to do like granular updates, what you would rather do is, let's add another property here. Let's add, maybe we can call it branch, because we do have like owner. I'm not sure. We're using hard-coded data here. Let's just call it title. I just need something to work with, or description, whatever.
But don't we have name for this branch? I think it's name.
Yeah, it's only that. Oh yeah, because we have the data here. Okay, we can just shove it in there. Okay, so owner repo. I renamed it to branch.
Okay. Yeah, name is very confusing.
It's very generic, yeah. And what we'll do here, we'll just use the same repo and branch that we use to query the data. Nice. Okay. So what were we doing? Yeah, we were exploring the use branch context. So now we have more stuff in there. We have, can I see it easily? Anyways, we have like owner, repo, and branch in there. And if we want to change the branch name, currently that would change the signal, and anything consuming the signal would like reconcile. But here you have the opportunity to be more granular. So you could just say, depending on what you intend to change, or depending on what can change. So for example, the ID would never change, and the owner would never change, and the repo would never change, because that would be a completely different branch. So the only thing that can really change from the data we have now is the branch name. So if we rather put that in the signal, and then we just say, if you want to look at the ID, we just return the branch data ID, because that can never change. That will always be the same. And repo. So the point is that you have full control of the granularity of changes. What is it? Repo. And then,
so here we are just returning the prop,
yes,
which never changes. Yeah,
exactly. But the branch is put into a signal because we know it can change. And when it changes, we only want the components that's actually consuming the branch to reconcile. And then if I let's play around with like change branch name or something. So if I want to do optimistic updates, I can just have all branch name equals branch.value. And then I do something async, change branch name, whatever. We don't have to implement that. But, oh, sorry. So first we just go in and we change the...
basically updated.
Yeah, new name. So we just go in and change it. So now any component that cares about this branch name will reconcile. And then if there's an error related to this, we can go in and we can say that, no, let's move back to the old one.
That's cool.
And that's
make it optimistic update very easy.
Yeah, because we talked about, like I saw yesterday, that React Query came out with a new version, and it was really interesting how they did optimistic updates. That like Like you would do use mutation and then you do something here, but the point
Mm-hmm.
is what you get on the other side, and that is pending and something called variables, I think. So if you mutate, for example, the name, let's imagine this is the change branch name, like that, you're able to like see if the mutation is pending, which is cool. And you can also then access like what is the pending stuff
Yeah.
I've kind of sent to the
Mm-hmm.
server. Where I can't remember what variables is. If it's like an array of the arguments, I think so. I'm not sure why they call it variables. Anyways, but let's imagine variables is the name. Um, so as long as a mutation is running, it is the new name, and then I guess you have something else up here, which is the like query for the actual branch data thing. Anyways, the point is that this kind of optimistic updates does make sense within the component scope. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and even though any component can like use mutation to subscribe to any pending state, they all need to explicitly deal with the optimistic state of the mutation,
Yeah.
as opposed to here the components doesn't care, they just consume the branch, and then we are doing the optimistic stuff behind the scenes. um,
Yeah. You simply need to update to consume the real value. It
mhm,
doesn't matter if it's a pending value or the final value. And
exactly.
maybe there are other benefits how use mutation was implemented, but I can see that when using this approach, you need to specifically consume the variables in
Yeah.
every single component, and it might be tricky. You could end up with a lot of duplicate code,
Mhm.
and if something changes, we need to change it every place.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
While while with the signal approach, you just use you just consume the final value.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter if it's a pending one or not.
exactly. um, so I do think and what I suspect would happen is that you will kind of maybe create some kind of branch data hook kind of thing that you would implement, and then you would kind of put the mutation and the query behind that, and then you would maybe you would like even I don't know if you would kind of do the same kind of thing here where we have like title or sorry, branch, but
Mm-hmm.
that branch would then be like a getter where you would like, if it's pending, you would return variables, and then or the data uh, branch. Like I don't know. The point is that it's not straightforward to do
Yeah.
it. So I think it works really well in a local component scope. And even though you can subscribe to it cross scopes, it doesn't solve the whole. Sorry, cross components. It doesn't solve the whole picture. But there's a negative side to this one as well, and that is like, what if you have a list? So you have to like add to the list, but now you have an item in the list where everything else in the list has an ID, but this new thing in the list doesn't have an ID yet because the mutation isn't done. So
Oh, I
that
see.
means that the list doesn't only have the items of the list, it might have the items of the list or a pending item. And then you have to
Mm-hmm.
like manage that. But still, like any consumer of that list knows that there can be either existing items or there can be pending items in that list.
Mm-hmm.
And that's reflected everywhere. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I would argue that this is a general problem for
Mm,
automatically why,
mhm.
because you can simply guess what is the result of the API.
Yeah.
So you only have the information you are inserting, like the variables, and you can try to mock the spending values, like ID, um, date, or anything else that is strictly related to the server.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
general problem, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of solutions actually allows the client to generate the ID beforehand. So then it doesn't become uh, like a thing. I guess example from React Query was as well that you know that it's sometimes you want to know that it's a pending item so that you can have like maybe a spinner next to it or change the opacity of it because it's pending. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah, regardless, it's very typical when you have server side data that you populate it with some additional properties related to the client because a client wants to show things in a different way that's unrelated to what's the data on the server. It's like very specific to the client.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, cool.
Well, but I was thinking,
Yeah.
you you still can implement a spending signal, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's an important thing for your application.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
your
yeah.
example, your previous example, which was an update branch name,
Mm-hmm.
you could still return like a spending signal and then you watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point. So if we were to like completely do this full, oh, did I remove it now? Okay. So let's imagine that we really want the UI to know when we are changing the branch name. Maybe it takes a long time. Maybe we want to disable certain things while it's changing
Mm-hmm.
the name. Uh, then we changing branch name, and then that will be a signal, which will be a promise of maybe nothing is returned. I don't know. And then we would allow you to consume that promise, and then when we call so what happens
Yeah,
now is
perfect.
that we are doing both. We are optimistically just changing the branch name, but we have also put the process of changing the name into the changing branch name signal. So any component can look at changing branch name and reconcile whenever that promise updates and know that
Mm-hmm.
there's something pending related to changing the name.
Cool, cool. Yeah, like it.
Uh, let's see. I'm just going through these and let's see. Observer. So here we are. Use. Yeah, and this is also a thing I'm a bit curious about. It's like, for example, now we have, uh, yeah, it's like if you have these nested contexts, would you want to, like, this is the thing that still needs exploring from my side. It's like if we go back to the Git panel, like use branch context. If you were to like use, maybe it's the Git panel, for example, and there's so much functionality inside the Git panel that's only related
Mm-hmm.
to the Git panel. So we create a context for it because it's like a complicated component tree. It's much simpler to just have a context around it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the Git status, for example, that's part of the branch context because that has an even wider usage. It's like used across the whole editor. Uh, and the question then is like in that Git, yeah, we're in the Git panel now. Um, how would you think about like, okay, you consume the Git status from the branch context because it's just a branch wide usage area. and then you would do like, I don't know. Do we really have anything that's specific to the Git panel that you can't do? You,
Um, well,
you,
we have the commit.
yeah, but you can do that from create PR on the other
Oh,
side of the
right.
app.
Yeah.
And discard, I think you can also do that from other parts of
Yeah.
the app.
I don't. Yeah, you can. You can.
Yeah, and you can generate AR commit messages from others. Okay, but imagine there was a lot of stuff you could do. That. But it's so funny because it says so much about our like state management. It's like everything can be used everywhere, kind of thing. Uh, but a specific funk is like use a Git panel context. Um, so I guess that's kind of the place where you still kind of get into this flat hooks problem, where if you have like three levels of even though you only have three contexts to look at, it's not always obvious where you find certain things, because they live in the context because of where they're being used, like how broadly is the thing being used, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not always intuitive. um, so the question was really then, if I'm using a Git panel context, would it be fine that the Git panel context just exposes the Git status as well? Like it could do that. It could just use the branch context inside itself and then just expose the Git status. So you have it both in the Git panel context and in the branch context. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just thinking out loud.
Mm, I see the problem.
Uh, yeah, I should probably be more explicit about calling them promise. Let's do that. Because it isn't a Git status, it's a promise of Git status. Where are you? Git status promise. Oh, we have weird stuff there. Let's see. Git panel, Git status promise, and then we'll just use. It would be amazing if I can actually already remove the use hook from Impact app.
Mm-hmm.
But it should work. Mm. So this is committing message. Yeah, this should naming conventions is really hard, because now like this is called Git status promise. This is also a promise, but it's not called promise. God damn it. Oh yeah, we might not be. We might not be committing any. Oh, this should be okay. Oh, message. There we go. We might not be committing anything, so this can be
Mm-hmm.
undefined.
Okay.
Okay, nice. And then we have the sidebar. I don't think that does anything specific. We have sign in. Let's see if we can get this running before the end of the stream. So what are we doing here? API. Oh, I think that's fine. So here we are. Yeah. So this was also interesting because by having this signal. Oh yeah, this is wrong. Subscribe. Oh, we don't have sign in. Oh, sorry. I think I didn't refactor that. Yeah, sorry. It's still called
Mm-hmm.
mutation. But this is good because then I can talk about something cool. Like we talked about like how you can subscribe to mutations. But what's interesting is that sign in and sign out are two different mutations, right? It's two different requests. But in terms of subscribing, we only care about if we are like signing in or signing out. It's the same thing we're interested in,
Hmm.
arguably. But what that means is that we can actually have like changing authentication, for example. And then when it doesn't matter if we're signing in or signing out, we can, oh, sorry. We can use the same signal so that components can just, if they care about if you're signing in or signing out, to disable something, for example,
Yeah.
they can. I'm not saying that necessarily what we would want, but you could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually we only disable the button or something or put a loading.
Yeah. What did I do? There we go. So in the sign in thing now, we can just, oh, I didn't expose it, sorry. So we'll, changing authentication. So here we can have changing authentication, and then we can, oh, sorry, I didn't put the type on it. I think, I'm not sure if we actually get anything. We get the user here. Oh yeah, user or null. User or null, or void maybe. CodeSandbox API. Yeah, let's just grabbing from there. I think actually we have something called rest. I think it's rest.user. Okay, nice. Now it's happy. So what it also means is that we could merge these into one button. But
Yeah.
yeah,
If you want.
if you want. Cool. Sign in top bar doesn't have anything. Okay, cool. Let's just see if it runs. I'm not sure if it. Mm-hmm. Probably did something wrong. Oh my god. Oh my god. There we go. Oh yeah. And then what was it? Impact? Oh yeah, and with the, oh my god.
The 500 error.
CodeSandbox. Oh, we still have it here. Nice. Oh yeah. It's this in, oh, global error boundary. That's the one thing we didn't check. And then let's see. Use global config. Oh, do we have sign in there? Wait, I can't remember how we implemented this one. What was that in the API? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I think it's API. Sorry. This would be changing authentication.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the signing notation there.
There we go. Okay. This is definitely cleaning up stuff, so that's good.
Yep. We removed a lot of code.
Oh, use is not a function. This is nice. We're seeing
Oh
the
no.
in branch. Is it here? Where was it? Oh, here? No, where the hell was it? Use fetch branch. Oh, that's weird. Oh, okay. So it's only the typing for it. That's the thing.
Oh,
It isn't actually a function. But I know it's
that's
in the
weird.
experimental branch. Where the hell did we use it elsewhere? Was there anything else? No. But yeah, hopefully that means it's around the corner then. Loading.
Cool. Starting micro VM.
Yay, it worked.
Amazing. Yay. Here it is.
Amazing.
Cool. Let me try to go to this branch and make
Yeah,
some change.
change something.
Is it test sandbox chicken
Chicken soup,
soup?
yeah.
Right. Okay, I can see you there. Well, we do have some changes there.
Oh, we do. We do. Mm, 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 mm.
Mm, didn't really work. That's weird.
That is weird. Git status. Is it in the panel we're showing it? Yeah.
Yes. I can see you are connected to this branch.
Mm-hmm.
I have at least 3 file changes, but I can't see you. Can see these changes in your documentation. Um,
It might be. But
are
we're.
we listening for changes?
What is happening? It might have gone into that weird loop thing, because now I moved the global error boundary again. You remember I talked about how it would just go into this weird. Yeah, I think it's the. It doesn't go away from suspending.
Mm,
I think maybe it's the. Oh, git status promise.
it's
Yeah,
still
so we have a
suspending.
fulfilled promise, but I think it's the suspense boundary that fails. And I don't know why. Because we have the sidebar that uses a suspense. Yeah, I think there is a problem with. I didn't dive into it. There's something about the suspense boundary. I'm gonna try to remove it just to see what happens. It goes into some kind of loop behavior. I think it is because I have. Yeah, you see that now? It's even worse. I'm just gonna try to move the arrow boundary outside the suspense because I think that was the thing that fixed it without understanding why it fixed it. So it's like if you have a
Oh,
suspense boundary inside the arrow boundary, then it just, yeah, you see that? Now it,
it's maybe because the global error is catching the
yeah,
probe by the span.
exactly.
You cannot have a try catch before the spans.
Ah, but yeah, but there's still something weird going on though. Yeah, I have to debug that. It's probably something wrong in impact. I guess that's why. What's it called? Oh no, we're getting a 500 on. No, there we have it. Fulfilled. Yeah, and now I think it's like it's just in a bad state. Okay, but it kind of works. What if I put suspense back here? I guess that's why suspense is still like in experimental state. Yeah, it freezes completely. Anyways, I'll look at that. Um, but it's kind of nice. Um,
Yeah, I like this refactor. It seems more removed a lot of code.
yeah, exactly.
I think we are ready to commit these changes now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's do it. I don't think it's able to generate. Oh, that's funny. Cool. And oh yeah, I forgot to delete the folder. But yeah, I'm going to I'm going to figure out what that bug is,
Hmm.
and then maybe we could finally finish the finish the thing. Yeah, because we kind of gone through all the like we have all the primitives now. We have like a structure that's worth like exploring further and kind of throw more scenarios at it,
Hmm.
and then maybe a good path forward would be to actually just focus on implementing stuff.
Yeah, I was wondering if, for example, this search feature would be a good case
Mm,
for this because we stream the result. It might be a good one.
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a complicated one. Yeah, because I'm also curious how I would love to try to use RxJS or like not RxJS as like a library, but like an observable and the concept that RxJS is based on because it's literally built to handle like race conditions, async race conditions, and streaming
Cool.
search is definitely a potential for race conditions. Um,
Cool,
and
cool.
see, yeah, so we could try solving it just using a signal, and then we could maybe because I don't know much about RxJS, but I know it's a good use case, the search for using RxJS, and then maybe we'll learn something as well.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. I guess
Yeah,
that's it.
that's it.
We'll talk later.
Talk later. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you, Kristen.
You too,
Thanks for
Danilo.
having me. Bye bye.
Bye for now.